Thank you for joining me on this survey today. My wonderful clients, with whom I wouldn't be able to do any of these videos without clients, clearly, sent me these images. There's some dampness to the front wall and to the back of the property. They had the render removed and it has started to dry, but looking on the outside we can see there's quite a lot of dampness, and I will go through all of these during the survey. Listen in now. So just to say that this was the initial damp issue. This is the front render, the overflowing gutter, but it seems to be solved. So hopefully this will start to dry out. What you want to do is get yourself one of these damp meters. Great. And this one's called Dr. Meter, but there are plenty of others. Put it onto masonry. I use this as radio waves. Oh, and actually it's showing 56, which is actually pretty dry. So I think you're already drying out. I'm going to stand up here. It takes 6 to 9 months to dry out, but sometimes, well, when it's higher, generally much quicker. Okay, bit of dampness. Ironically, it doesn't show damp there, but okay, bit of dampness there, but otherwise it's pretty dry. So you can just sand it down, use a bit of filler. I'd wash it as well, because you'll find that these brown stains come from water passing through brickwork, picking up the pigmentation from the bricks. Just to say, the dribble marks there, it's often damper at the base, so let's have a look as well. Oh yeah. So this is looking through a thermal imaging camera, and we can see heat loss to the wall next door. So this is to the front, and yes, actually this is starting to dry out here. Even though it's looking a bit damp at the base, but they may have some other issues there, because it looks damp all the way around. They're lower down as well. I would say, right, you've got an issue here. This plant is growing out. I didn't see this. So you want to drain this across to the front. Essentially bypass the drain. It's blocked by the plant. But yeah, your drain's clearly blocked by that plant. This is overflowing, which is not great. It's not too bad, but it can all add up. And then you've got this slightly odd system there, which I think needs to be re-evaluated. Basically, at least hold it in position. Looking more closely. So this is upstairs. Still damp up there. It looks like condensation rather than penetrating damp. There's no colour. And that's because it's near to top of the building. It's going to be cold, heat loss there, plus you've got the damp coming through that's presumably solved, but it will cause dampness to the external brick. She'll take time to dry out. So again, this needs to be fixed. Let's try that. So it looks worse than it is. This is to the back of the property in the kitchen. Where there's mould, you know, 1, there's no rising damp, and 2, there's a vapour issue. This is where there was a steel joist holding up the ceiling. There's the metal detector, and it's showing some metal deep down. The dribble marks are a sign of condensation. Metal loses heat very rapidly. It's probably metal embedded in this for the RSJ support. Just to say, there is ventilation here. There's trickle vents which are open, which is good. And this wall is dry till about there. The sound is a good signal of dampness. It's got this sort of triangular shape. That's because of the heat loss, and then gravity pulls the moisture down. And moisture in a wall is a poor insulator, so it increases the condensation. If it were rising damp, which it clearly isn't, you wouldn't have mould, because the mould is inhibited by the salts found in groundwater, the source of rising damp, and also it would be evenly horizontally across the whole property, which clearly it isn't, including on internal walls. And they're dry. So the relative humidity under this subfloor is fine, so I don't think you need to increase the ventilation, but it's worth monitoring with a data logger. Say that it can be difficult to determine exactly what factors cause one area to become damper than another area, but what happens is, once condensation forms on a brick, on plaster and brick, it becomes damp, and that damp then loses heat more rapidly, and then as it loses heat, it becomes more susceptible to condensation. So it suddenly starts to look a lot worse than other areas.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I put it on film so you don't have to. But it's like you got two virtually identical walls. One that's maybe a quarter of a degree different to the other. So that the damp is starting to form. That's why it comes down.
Yeah. That's how that started years ago.
But I would say, I'm going to have a look at that again. I'm going to have a look at the heat profile, but I suspect there's an RSJ that's running through here, and that goes all the way through the wall there, and that's bang in line with where that RSJ is, and you get heat loss where there's an RSJ, because that's just the way it is. Yeah. So I'll use a thermal imaging camera to see if I can spot anything, but sometimes it can be just these marginal factors that cause increased heat loss that causes condensation. But you're not getting the staining that you're seeing in the front wall, and that demonstrates to me that it's not coming from the outside in, it's not travelling through the wall, but it's forming on the surface of the wall. Now, the issue about lack of airflow in the subfloor could be a factor, and I'll have a look. I'll measure the subfloor humidity. And it's not ideal, and it can exacerbate problems. But I would say what I'm seeing here is coming from the kitchen, and there are three factors that so one is I'm guessing, but I don't see any extractor fan from the hob. Two is you've got children are wonderful things, but they also produce lots of vapour. Yeah. And
what I'm hearing is get rid of the children.
We're
on board.
And then the third thing is, during COVID there was a huge increase in the amount of condensation and mould, because people were spending much more time at home and working from home and all of these things. That increase, A, respiration, B, cooking at home during lunchtime, washing. Well, presumably you're washing as much as you were before, though. But with young kids, you're washing.
It's definitely got more.
Yeah.
Since she's 3, and it's got worse in that.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Oh yeah, there's a wash on pretty much every day.
But as in, that's got worse.
Oh right, yeah.
So the simple solutions are going to be, and I'll list them. So the first thing is monitor. So know what you're doing, and keep the internal dew point, which is a measure of the amount of vapour in air, below the outside temperature, and then you won't have a risk of condensation and mould, and you have perfect climatic conditions. You won't get dust mites that cause allergies. You won't get mould and so on. So number one. Two is do as much ventilation as you can and top it up with a dehumidifier, and then use that dehumidifier when you're away, when your humidity is excess because of the high dew point, And just as a background thing, I mean, in my own property, we often don't use the kitchen extractor fan, even though we've got one, because it's quite noisy and you can't chat very easily. So we just run a dehumidifier 24/7 in the background, and we just every day we just decant it. It's just part of the normal process, as I did this morning before coming here. It's just part of the normal process. And we monitor it, and we don't have damp issues, but we did have before then.
These monitors, are they smart monitors so you can get them on your phone, can you? Or
well, there are different ones, but the one I'm recommending is a lower cost one that is Bluetooth rather than Wi-Fi. But you know, in your own property, you can.
I'm just thinking if we were away and we wanted to,
Well, how long do you have to monitor for?
Well, I until the problem's solved.
Okay.
But then
when they're 18.
But they're only three months worth of data you get. You can reset it. But no, I just say become familiar. Use a damp meter to find out that your damp is disappearing.
Right.
And then become comfortable. And you know, there will have to be certain changes, but there are lots of alternative ways of dealing with it, like putting in an extractor fan. That would go a long way. But you know, that doesn't have to be the solution. Yeah. It's just one of them.
We just need to be more aware of it. It's just because I mean, obviously we just assumed because it was starting, it started low and it got higher. So we immediately thought.
The reason why is it's always coldest at the base of the wall.
Yeah.
So that's the bit that's vulnerable. And also, Also, dampness is drawn down through gravity. So it's always going to be drawn down to the base of the wall. And the damper the brick, the worse the heat retention, and therefore it becomes cyclical. So that's why you tend to get it at the base of the wall, but it's not always at the base of the wall. You'll probably find, I'll go and measure it, but you'll probably find this is all a bit damp all the way up, and then you have a profile that's very much a condensation profile. You've got mould in the corner as well.
Yeah.
If you've got mould, you've got a humidity issue. That's just, you know.
That's relatively recent, isn't it? I've noticed.
In the grand scheme of things.
In the grand scheme of things, yeah.
And you were saying you got
yeah,
mould.
I mean the
this,
whole under there just smells.
I don't think there's
musky.
not visible mold, but it smells musky.
Yeah, and it's because we store tin goods under there. It's not great, but we don't have.
Well, unfortunately, tin goods draw out the heat. So relative humidity. So mold grows where relative humidity goes above 85% for long periods of time. Relative humidity is a measure of air's capacity to hold moisture. The warmer it is, the more moisture you can hold. Conversely, the colder it is, the less you can hold until you get to what's called the dew point when condensation forms. Well, mould starts to grow about 3 degrees centigrade above the dew point, roughly speaking. I can show you with data loggers, but I'll put a piece into the report about data loggers, but get them and I'll show you a couple of ways of setting them up. But yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, it's good news.
That's good. So because I don't know if you mentioned, but we thought we were going to have to rip up all the decking and put in drains.
Well, what I would just say to you is ideally the decking allows through flow of air from the subfloor void, because that's the purpose of the subfloor air bricks, is to create the airflow. But actually, if you don't have high subfloor relative humidity, you don't need the air bricks, and you don't need to worry about the decking. Okay. And there's a case for putting a data logger in the subfloor and just measuring it. Okay. I mean, actually, in a sense, the subfloor ventilation is there as a fail-safe in case you have a leak that goes unnoticed. And but anyway, I'm going to have to spend a bit of time measuring lots of things.
Sure. Okay. How would we get a data logger into the subfloor?
Well, I'll have a look, but you can. There are different ways of doing it.
Because I mean, the whole idea of the decking causing the problem is the only thing I could ever understand was why, if it was decking causing the problem, it'd be in the living room.
Yeah, well, and you get brown staining as you have on the front.
Yeah, it would be all around the perimeter, not just there.
No, I agree. So this is looking through a thermal imaging camera at the corner again, and you see the heat loss there. So obviously heat loss increases the risk of condensation. Notice its relative temperature, so it's changing all the time, but blue is the coldest. This is the corner where the mould is.
External surface area.
It's really important to know that the cause of these issues is not the heat loss, it's the vapour.
Condensation and then mould in the corner.
The reason it's happening in these places rather than anywhere else is because of the cold.
You got some cracks, render cracks. They just keep an eye on those. I can't see penetrating damp, but what can happen is water can pass through the outer skin, dampen that, and cause extra heat loss. So just be careful, be aware of the risks. Oh yeah, so that's your air vent, and it's reduced airflow rather than completely suffocated. And also you've got difference between the renders, which isn't ideal. So when the light's turned on, the fan isn't really working. Sounds like it's trying to work. I imagine there's a humidity activation system, so I'll just find out more about that. The solution to these problems is typically very simple. These get blocked. Oh, this is blocked. There you go. It's a backflow shutter. It's blocked by the ducting. See how easy it is just to fix that. I mean, it's not going to close, but at least you get ventilation. Let's see if that works better.
Unfortunately, in this case, the backflow shutter has damaged the fan and it will never work properly. So it needs to be upgraded, replaced. You want to have one that is at least 15 litres per second. It should be at probably 25 to achieve 15 litres a second. You want it to be relatively quiet. And you want it to have an overrun of 30 minutes, and don't forget to keep the doors closed. So have a look at the recommendations, other properties that I compare it to, and look at the description for more details. Thank you very much again. Bye.